So good afternoon once again. Welcome to your subjects in NatSci 22 or agricultural biology. So in this video we're going to talk about the biochemistry of cells. So we all know that bio means life and chemistry means the study of chemical substances and its properties. So this time we're going to talk about the combination of the study of life and chemicals of a particular cell. We all know that cell is the basic unit of life. So first we discuss about the uses of organic molecules. So we consume an average of 140 pounds of sugar per person per year. Can you imagine that? As we drink coffee, juice, and etc. And these are cellulose found in the plant cell walls is the most abundant organic compound on Earth. So what are the uses of organic molecules? A typical cell in your body has about 2 meters of DNA, which looks like this, while a typical cow produces over 200 pounds of methane gas each year. So water, as we've discussed the water properties, is about 60 to 90% of an organism is made up of water and is used in the most reaction in the body. We call it as the universal solvent because it is usually the substances that are being dissolved in all types of substances. So water properties, as we have mentioned earlier on our previous topics, have the polarity property and the cohesiveness, adhesiveness, and the surface tension, which makes it very powerful. It has the ability to attract ions. It has the ability to gather together itself. That's why when you drop uh, water, then it goes together. It doesn't scatter, and it has the ability for adhesiveness. It means that it will even move from one place to another as it has a surface tension. So carbon-based molecules, although a cell is mostly water, the rest of the cell consists mostly of the carbon-based molecules, which is shown on the figure. And organic chemistry is the study of carbon compounds. So there are two types of chemistry for the study of chemistry. We have the organic and inorganic. If we study on carbon compounds, that's organic chemistry. As carbon is a versatile atom, it has 4 electrons and an outer shell that holds 8. So this is the single bond. When 2 carbon atoms bond, they share 1, 2, or 3 electrons to each and form a covalent band. So it can also be double banded or triple banded. Carbon can share its electrons with other atoms to form up to even 4 covalent bands. So what are hydrocarbons? Hydrocarbons are the simplest carbon compounds and they contain only carbon and hydrogen atoms. We have here the carbon and the 4 hydrogen bands. Carbon can use its bands to attach to other carbons and form an endless diversity of carbon skeletons as shown in here. So it can form from here methane, and which looks like this, and it can even like the ethane, propane, butane, isobutane, 1-butene, 2-butene, cyclohexane, and the benzene ring. These are all made by carbon atoms. We also have the large hydrocarbons. These are the main molecules in the gasoline we burn in our cars. The hydrocarbons of fat molecules provide energy for our bodies as well. That's why the man eating in French fries. The shape of organic molecules looks like this, and each type of the organic molecule has a unique three-dimensional shape and determines its function in an organism. So we call them functional groups, a group of atoms that give properties to the compounds to which they attach. We have here the ketone, with this double bonds carbon and oxygen, and the alcohol with the OH, and the aldehyde with the COH, and the organic acid which has C double bonds oxygen and OH single bonds. So this with the gain of electrons is are from the reduced to the oxidized or lost electrons. These are therefore the common functional groups. Some common functional groups are with their formula and the name of the compounds and the example of the chemical formula and where it is found. So we have first the hydroxyl. Usually this is the general formula and the names are under alcohol. Example ethanol, and these are found in water-soluble vitamins and sugar. Next is the carbonyl. It looks like this formula, and these are aldehydes and ketones like the propanol and the acetone, and these are found in some sugars, formaldehyde as a preservative, and while the ketones are found in ketone-bodied sugars in urine and from fat breakdown. Next is the carboxyl, which looks like this, and these are known as the carboxylic acids. Example is the acetic acid, which are found in the amino acids, protein, and some vitamins or fatty acids. And the amino are known as amines, like the methylamine, and these are of course found in the amino acids, proteins, urea, in urine from protein breakdown. Now we have the giant molecules, polymers. The large molecules are called polymers, and polymers are built from smaller molecules called monomers. And biologists call them the macromolecules or the giant molecules or polymers. The examples of this are the proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, nucleic acids, and the proteins, which looks like this, and the lipids from fats, and carbohydrates from glycogen, and nucleic acids are the genetic or the DNA genes. So these are actually the examples of the common polymers. And most macromolecules are polymers. Polymers are made by stringing together many smaller molecules called monomers, like such as the nucleic acid monomer. So linking monomers are cells link monomers by a process called condensation or dehydration synthesis, removing a molecule of water. This process joins two sugar monomers, this one, and to make a double sugar with the removal of hydrox OH. So breaking down polymers means cell breaks down macromolecules by a process called hydrolysis with the addition of molecule of water. So water added to split a double sugar. So this one is split with the addition of water. The macromolecules in organisms have four categories of large molecules in cells, and these are once again the carbohydrates, the lipids, the proteins, and the nucleic acids. So what are carbohydrates? This includes small sugar molecule in soft drinks and long starch molecules in pasta and potatoes. So one classification under carbohydrate is the monosaccharides. These are called simple sugars, which include glucose, fructose, and galactose, and they have the same chemical but different structural formula, C6H12O6. So this is they have the same chemical formula, which has 6 carbons, 12 hydrogen, and 6 oxygen, all in all, but they differ in structure as shown on the figure. Sugar figures here. This is the glucose structure, the galactose structure, and the fructose gap. So as you can see here, the difference is the for the fructose. So this is the main difference here. But in here, a bit of here. Parang baliktad siya for glucose and galactose. For the monosaccharides, these are glucose found in sports drinks, and fructose is found in fruits, while honey contains both the glucose and the fructose. So they say honey is healthier than other sugars, so they both contain glucose and fructose, a combination actually. Galactose is called the milk sugar. So all OSE is ending means they are sugar. So what are isomers? These are glucose and fructose because they are structured which are different, but their chemical formulas are the same. So they're called isomers. So once again, with the same um, chemical formula, but different structure, are called isomer, like the glucose and the fructose. So what are rings? In a aqueous watery solution, monosaccharides form ring structure. So like this. So cellular fuel or monosaccharides are the main fuel that cells uses for cellular work. So we use carbohydrates, mainly monosaccharides, for the production of ATP. We also have another classification which are disaccharides. A disaccharide is a double sugar. They're made of joining two monosaccharides. Since we have here an example, glucose plus fructose is sucrose, which involves removing a water molecule through condensation, and the bond called a glycosidic band. So disaccharides, common examples are sucrose, or the name as table sugar, and lactose, milk sugar, and maltose or grain sugar. So that sucrose is composed of glucose and fructose. Glucose is a monosaccharide, remember, and maltose is composed of two glucose molecules, and lactose is made up of galactose and glucose. So polysaccharides are complex carbohydrates and composed of many sugar monomers linked together and polymers of monosaccharide chains. Example of these polysaccharides is the starch, which has glucose monomer, and starch, and glycogen, and cellulose. So what are starch? Is an example of a polysaccharide in plants, and plant cells store starch for energy, such as potatoes and grains are the major sources of starch in the human diet. So what are glycogens? Glycogen is an example of a polysaccharide in animals. Animals store excess sugar in the form of glycogen. And glycogen is similar to structure to starch because both are made up of glucose monomers. So what are cellulose? Is the most abundant organic compound on Earth, and it forms cable-like fibrils in the tough walls that enclose plants, and it's the major component of wood, and it is also known as a dietary fiber. So this is what makes up the cellulose, a crystalline array of molecules in a micelle with individual cellulose molecules and cellulose microfibril with polysaccharides other than cellulose and cellulose molecules, which definitely are from sugars. Dietary cellulose, on the other hand, are most animals cannot derive nutrition from fiber, so they have bacteria in their digestive tracts that can break down cellulose as they eat different grasses which are made of cellulose. So sugars in water are simple sugars and double sugars dissolved readily in water. So they are hydrophilic, or meaning water loving. It has OH groups which make them water soluble. So the sugar molecules, like the simple sugars, will freely dissolve in water. So another complex compound is the lipids. These are hydrophobic, which are water-fearing, and they do not mix with water. And we know that, at least you As you can see, oil, fats, and oils that is not dissolving in water, which includes fats, waxes, steroids, and oil. This is a typical structure of a fat molecule. What are then the functions of lipids? So they store energy, help to insulate the body, because when you are cold or the animals are cold or in living things, it's the fats that makes us insulator. And calcium and protect organs too. So therefore, being fat is also an advantage, but not too much. Types of fatty acids can be saturated or unsaturated. Saturated fatty acids have the maximum number of hydrogens bonded to the carbons and all single bonds between carbons, while unsaturated fatty acids have less than the maximum number of hydrogens bonded to the carbons as a double bond between carbons. So once again, they have the saturated fatty acids have more number of hydrogen bonds than the unsaturated fatty acid, and unsaturated fatty acids have double bonds, while saturated fatty acids are single bonds. So the types of fatty acids as shown on the figure here, the saturated fatty acids have single bonds in carbon chain, while the unsaturated fatty acids have a double bond. So what are triglycerides? These are monomer of lipids composed of glycerol and fatty acid chains. So this is shown, this is an organic alcohol if it's ending with a OL, or glycerol. It is composed of glycerol and 3 fatty acid chains. 3 fatty acid chains and glycerol, which forms the backbone of the fat. So triglycerides are the backbone of the fat, or the glycerol. So this is another figure of the glycerol with the fatty acid chains. So fats in organisms, mostly animal fats, have a high proportion of saturated fatty acids and exist as a solid at room temperature like the butter, margarine, and shortening. So you will know that if it's high in saturated fatty acids, usually they become solid at room temperatures. Example of this are the butter, margarine, and shortening. While if it is most plant, in the other hand, tend to be low in saturated fatty acid and exist in liquids at room temperature or oil. So it means that they're just low in saturated fatty acid if they remain oil. So the fats, dietary fat, consists largely of the molecule triglyceride as backbone and composed of glycerol and 3 fatty acids chain. So this is just to show you the condensation links the fatty acids to the glycerol. So lipids and cell membranes. Cell membranes are made up of lipids called phospholipids. Phospholipids have a head that is polar and attract water hydrophilic. And phospholipids have also 2 tails that are nonpolar and do not attract water or hydrophobic. So this is the polar head, the phosphate containing, and the fatty acid tail, which is nonpolar tail. What are steroids? We heard a lot about steroids, which makes the artificial enlargement of muscular system and so on. So the carbon skeleton of steroids is bent to form 4 fused rings. We have cholesterol is the base steroid from which your body produces other steroid. The estrogen and testosterone are also steroids. So the cholesterol, the testosterone, and the estrogen structures. Synthetic anabolic steroids. So they are variants of testosterone. Some athletes use them to build up their muscle quickly so they can pose serious health risks. Proteins is another complex structure. These are polymers made up of monomers called amino acids. All proteins are made of 20 different amino acids linked in different orders. So proteins are used to build cells, act as hormones and enzymes, and do much of the work in a cell. There are four types of proteins: the structural, the contractile, the storage, and the transport. So there are 20 amino acid monomers. We have the alanine, the valine, the leucine, isoleucine, the proline, the methionine, the phenylalanine, tryptophan, glycine, serine, glutamine, tyrosine, asparagine, cysteine, and threonine, aspartic acid, glutamic acid, lysine, arginine, histidine. So you can actually find all of these monomers, amino acids, in some of the ingredients of our food products, no? And at least I hope you will familiarize with these 20 amino acids. At least you can do half or more. Structure of amino acids: have a central carbon with four things bonded to it. We have the amino group, or NH2, the carboxyl group, or the COOH, the hydrogen H, and the side group, the R. So the amino group, the carboxyl group, and the R group. So example is the leucine, which is hydrophobic, and the serine, which is hydrophilic. So linking amino acids, the cell links amino acids together to make proteins. The process is called condensation or dehydration with the addition or dehydration of water. So peptide bonds form to hold the amino acids together. So this is the amino side group and the dehydration synthesis to form peptide bonds. Proteins as enzymes. So many proteins act as a biological catalyst for enzymes, and thousands of different enzymes exist in the body. Enzymes control the rate of chemical reaction by weakening the bonds, thus lowering the amount of activation energy needed for the reaction. So the enzymes itself are actually proteins, and they are globular proteins. Their folded conformation creates an area known as the active site, and the nature and arrangement of the amino acids in the active site makes it specific for only one type of substrate. So we have discussed about the enzyme before, and once again, this is the figure you have seen on the previous video. The enzyme with the substrate is equal to the product. No? The free enzyme with the free substrate, and when they form an enzyme substrate complex, and then enzyme product complex, and then free enzyme with the release of the free products. Then the enzyme goes around again for another conjugation. So how the enzyme works: the enzymes are reusable. So they, as I have mentioned earlier, so there can only be enzyme and its substrate. The active site changes its shape as descriptively discussed on the previous video, and they are called induced fit as they changes the fit for the substrate. So what are the primary protein structure? The primary structure is the specific sequence of amino acids in a protein called polypeptide or amino acid. So they look like this different amino acids. The protein structures are secondary protein structure which occur when protein chains coil or fold. When protein chains called polypeptides join together, the tertiary structure forms because the R group interact with each other, and in a watery environment of a cell, proteins become globular in their quaternary structure. So protein structure or conformations, as you can see here, the amino acid, the primary structure, they become with the hydrogen bond, alpha helix, and with pleated sheet, polypeptide single subunit. So from the secondary structure, with the hydrogen band, they form into tertiary structure, and quaternary structure. We also have denaturing proteins. They changes in temperature and pH can denature or unfold a protein so it no longer works. So when you cook denatures proteins in egg, no? And when milk protein separates into the curds, when you make cheese and whey, when it denatures. So that is also explains the process why the milk protein separates, no, in curds and whey as you make the cheese, because it denature when in its hot temperature and if the pH is changed. So changing amino acid sequence requires substitution of one amino acid for another in hemoglobin, which causes the sickle cell disease. So this one, the disease occur actually because of the amino acid substituted for hemoglobin. So this is the normal red blood cell with the normal hemoglobin, but as the sickle red blood cell occur, the sickle red hemoglobin is this substituted. So other important proteins also include the blood sugar level is controlled with a protein called insulin. We know that insulin causes the liver to uptake and store excess sugar as glycogen, and the cell membrane also contain proteins. And we are very aware that the lack of insulin will cause us a disease called as diabetes. So this is the structure of the insulin and the cell membrane with proteins and phospholipids. So next and lastly are the nucleic acids. So they store the hereditary information, contain information for making all the body's proteins, which are of two kinds, the DNA and the RNA, the deoxyribonucleic acid and the ribonucleic acid. So this is a structure which shows you the DNA strand with the bases, chromosomes, genes, and cell nucleus containing 23 pairs of chromosomes. So nucleic acids are polymers of nucleotides. We have here the nitrogenous base, AG, adenine, guanine, cytosine, or thymine, the phosphate group, and the sugar deoxyribose, the thymine and phosphate sugar nucleotide base. So the nucleotide is the nucleic acid monomer. We have the phosphate group, sugar, and base. This is the typical DNA nucleotide. So once again, the nucleic acids looks like this structure with a DNA double helix and DNA strand and the whole DNA nucleotide. So what are these bases? Each DNA nucleotide has one of the following bases. We call adenine, guanine, thymine, and cytosine. So this is the structure of the thymine, the cytosine, and the adenine and guanine. So nucleotide monomers form long chains called DNA. Nucleotides are joined by sugars and phosphates on the side with a backbone. So this is what composes the DNA strand, the bases, the adenine, cytosine, guanine, and thymine, and the nucleotide and its backbone. DNA are two strands of DNA joined together to form a double helix. So this is the base pair of the double helix, no? Two strands of DNA joining together. So the ribonucleic acid, the ribose sugar, has an extra OH or hydroxyl group. And it has also the base uracil U and instead of the thymine. While this one, the uracil instead of thymine, the phosphate group, and the hydroxyl group. So the ATP is used for cellular energy and used by cells for energy, and we call them adenosine triphosphate, which is made of the nucleotide with 3 phosphate groups. So energy is stored in the chemical bonds of ATP, and the last 2 phosphate bonds are high energy, And breaking the last phosphate bond releases energy for cellular work and produces the adenosine diphosphate and free phosphate. So to summarize, the macromolecules composed of carbohydrates, which are dietary energy storage for plant structure, such as the monomer monosaccharides like the glucose, fructose, and the saccharides, lactose, sucrose, and the polysaccharides starch cellulose. And the lipids, which are long-term energy storage for fats, like such as hormones for steroids, and the glycerol and fatty acid components of fat molecules, of course, fats, oils, and steroids. And the proteins, enzyme structure, storage, and contraction, transport, and others. Example is the amino acid, which are found in lactase and enzyme hemoglobin. And nucleic acids, information storage, which contain our genetic makeup. Example is the nucleotide, the DNA, and RNA. So those are the basic macromolecules of life. So if you have any question, you can raise your question on the posted video. And thank you for listening in this video, and hopefully you have understand well, and you can always watch the video again and again to go back and ask questions. So I hope to see you again on the next video as we discuss the next topics. So thank you very much, and see you on the next video.